Hello, and welcome to another episode of Voices to End Hunger. I'm your host, Minerva Delgado. Across the country, groups and coalitions have come together dedicated to ending hunger and malnutrition in their cities, towns, counties, regions, and states. These groups approach the root causes of poverty and hunger within their own contexts, providing solutions to local issues and models for the broader anti-hunger movement in the United States. At the Alliance to End Hunger, we partner with these organizations through the Hunger Free Communities Network, or the HFC Network as we like to call it. In this episode, I speak with three Hunger Free Communities Network leaders: Caitlyn Peacock of the Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger, Chris Bernard of Hunger Free Oklahoma, and Kate Howe of Indy Hunger Network. Together, we discuss the unique possibilities and challenges faced by local anti-hunger efforts, how their work intersects with current national policy discussions, as well as how their approaches have benefited from being part of the Hunger Free Communities Network. Caitlyn, Chris, and Kate, thank you for being here today. To start off, I'd love to hear what motivated each of you to get into this line of work and what the origin story is for your organization. Why don't we start with you, Caitlyn?
Hi, thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this panel. Really appreciate it. How I got involved is actually I was right out of college, an HIV tester and counselor, and I found working at this organization that a lot of the clients that were coming in and testing positive weren't able to take their medications properly because they didn't have enough food. So I helped the organization start their first food pantry, and that's when I had the realization that, hey, this was a much bigger problem, and got involved in AmeriCorps. And that's when I started with the Hunger Network and have worked in various jobs at the state level advocacy, local programming, and community organizing. The Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger, that I had the privilege of being the executive director of, started in about 2010-11, and it was the top 6 or 7 agencies: Salvation Army, Metropolitan Ministries, United Way, Tampa Bay Harvest, Feeding America, got together, and they were looking at a way to analyze hunger at a granular level. So, long story short, it brought the members together to start a coalition, to look at the supply and demand of hunger. And that was the initial project that really got the coalition started and working together to problem solve.
Great, thank you. Let's turn to Chris. Same question. What got you into this line of work, and what's the origin story for your organization?
So funny enough, actually, like my first dip into advocacy was around HIV and hepatitis C prevention. Also, I worked on needle exchange in Texas, one to legalize it so folks had access to clean needles and could take care of their health, whether they were low income diabetics or IV drug users or whatnot. And also helped run an outreach organization there straight out of college. And from there, decided if I wanted to do lobbying work, I should understand the law, and ended up in law school at Northwestern Chicago, and did wrongful convictions work and juvenile justice work while in law school, and then continued that out. So prison watchdog work all around the juvenile side, and then went inside government for 7 years for the county doing justice reform work for the county board president who ran on that platform. And came to realize over that time, like I'd always worked in the deep end of systems, and that maybe it was time for me to think about upstream, because like all these kids I met in juvenile prisons, or my clients who were convicted as juveniles and got life sentences, all these folks were lacking resources at a young age, and it led to various risk factors that put them where they were in the end. And I happened to be from Oklahoma, even though I didn't live there, and so was my wife. Foundation here in Oklahoma, and Henry Zero Foundation was doing an assessment on the state of hunger in Oklahoma, resources needed, and like what they could do to spur action. And out of that came, you have to start an organization that's focused big picture on systems change and on advocacy. And I actually, the first time I heard about the job, didn't think I wanted to work in food insecurity, and was like, no, I'll do something else. And then it came back around. I understood better what it was, right? About building public-private partnerships and leveraging community power and transforming systems to be supportive of communities instead of suppressing communities. And all of that sounded right up my alley and like fun. And so here we are 8 years later.
Thanks, Chris. Turning it over to you, Kate. What got you involved in this line of work? And tell us about the origin of your organization.
Well, my background is in conservation and ecology. So I worked in both academia and the nonprofit world on conservation issues, and actually ran a collective impact organization focused on invasive plants in the Midwest. And while I was doing that professionally, I also got involved in my local food pantry. There's a food pantry that was right across the street from my kids' school, and I would see families lined up in the afternoon when I would pick my kids up, and it troubled me that my kids were getting 3 meals a day and other kids in our community were not. And so I started volunteering there, and then eventually joined the board and became board chair. And at that time, I realized that, I was looking for a new career challenge, and the job with Indy Hunger Network came up. And so my skills in collective impact organizations translated to working in on a different topic, but sort of in the same regard of trying to bring together a diverse group of partners to work together on a common issue. And Indy Hunger Network started in 2009 in response to the Great Recession. Some of the local leaders of the nonprofit organizations doing feeding programs were seeing longer lines in response to the recession, more people needing help, and at the same time, donations to nonprofits were declining because of the problems in the stock market, people's investments going away. And so the head of one of our organizations called Second Helpings went to the mayor and said, "What are you doing to help us deal with this problem that we're facing?" And so he called together our original 7 partners, who were our Feeding America Food Bank, Midwest Food Bank, Second Helpings, Meals on Wheels, SACOA, which is our area agency on aging, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and then Connect to Help 211, which was the helpline and has now merged in with the state of Indiana, and just brought them together to get to know each other and start talking to each other. I'm told, I wasn't part of Indie Hunger Network at that time, but I'm told that those organizations didn't really know each other. Some of them didn't like each other, and they definitely weren't working together and seeing it as a common issue to be solved collectively. And so for many years, those partners just met to talk with each other, share information and resources. And over time, we decided to formalize. In 2012, we got nonprofit status, and in 2016, I was hired as the first executive director. And we've grown ever since because the need keeps growing as well.
Thanks, Kate. This podcast is about creating hunger-free communities. Each of your organizations is on a mission to do that. We at the Alliance to End Hunger maintain that hunger is a solvable problem, but it takes intention, coordination, and effort to solve it. Kate, you mentioned collective impact. I'd love to hear from each of you. What's your approach to creating a hunger-free community? Caitlyn?
The Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger really has a three-prong approach. So initially, we were looking at essentially a programmatic issue where geographically, on a granular zip code level, was there in theory not enough distribution to meet the need of those that are food insecure? And then we also looked at the local codes that could be creating barriers and challenges to those that are food insecure, but the local officials just might not have had time to look at or, care about. So we look at, policy locally, rely a lot on the Alliance to End Hunger to help us stay apprised of what's going on nationally. But the focus of Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger is really to, as locally and granularly as possible, we cover a 3-county area, figure out programmatically, both in the nonprofit charity world as well as the retail world where SNAP is accepted, where is there a good balance in those two entities, and where there isn't, can we help facilitate a balance between those two entities, as well as looking at the local policy that could be inhibiting those two entities from, being as efficient as possible. So we are very tiny but mighty staff, and we have hundreds of partners in the 3 counties, ranging from private public universities, colleges, and it really is about leveraging the strengths already within our communities. Natural disasters is really a big focus right now and how we're trying to create resiliency. Um, but really, again, that perspective as well depends on collaboration.
Thanks, Caitlin. Chris, what's your approach to creating hunger-free communities?
Um, I would say multifaceted, right? But it's based in kind of what you said, like collaboration's at the center of everything we do. It's in our organizational values. Intentionality is another one, right? That you mentioned, like being very intentional in our work. But it's about relationship and partnership and shared mission, right? And how do we use data to identify issues to either programmatically try and fill a gap through research and best practice, bring it to a partner to do it, or if we've already proven the concept out, how do we advocate for it? When we started, honestly, I thought the research and the advocacy would be the bulk of our work. It proved that there were a lot of gaps that nobody else wanted to fill in, so we've done a lot of programmatic work, which honestly has helped us build credibility and build more partnerships, right? So we have a SNAP outreach program with over 400 statewide partners who help connect folks to SNAP. For those who aren't as ready to, spend time walking somebody through the application, we run a hotline that helps them do that. We run the nutrition incentive program for our state and have worked on expanding and scaling that. We're doing projects on WIC. We're partnering with tribes, but in the end, for us, it's about either programmatically, what do we need to prove out as a concept for somebody else to take on and scale, or how do we act as a backbone organization to build collaborations around a shared interest and help build partners' capacity to address that?
Thanks, Chris. Kate, over to you. How do you approach hunger-free communities?
I'll probably repeat a lot of what Caitlin and Chris have said, sort of similar approach, but I think of us as doing really three key things with and for our partners. The first is convening for collaboration. So we bring them together just so that they can have a way to talk to each other, share information, and discuss potential collaborations with each other and with us. We support them through data advocacy and other information tools. And then we fill gaps, as Chris said. So we are always looking for what is not being done in our community that needs to be done. We have started several programs that we've then passed off to partner organizations. One of those is a double up program for SNAP. Another one is a food rescue program, rescuing food from semi loads that are rejected for whatever reason, but still have good food. Those are two programs that were really important in our community, but were better placed at a partner. And so we started them and then handed them over. Other programs we have started and maintained, as Chris said, because there wasn't another good place for them. And so we see ourselves as sort of that innovation engine that can try things, see if they work, make them successful, and then either hold them for the long term or pass them off to another partner to keep them going, depending on what makes the most sense. So we're always looking for ways that we can make the entire hunger relief system stronger both through our work and through supporting the partners in the work that they're doing.
Thanks, Kate. And it's great to hear that there are similarities in the approaches in terms of addressing really these systemic issues, looking at where the gaps are, using data, to understand what the community needs are, and partnerships, across that. But we also understand that every community has its unique set of challenges and its own context. And I'm just curious, what are some of the unique challenges in your community that you've been able to address through your Hunger Free Communities work? Why don't we start with you, Caitlin?
I will say we are addressing natural disasters. So we were slammed in the fall of 2024, 2 weeks apart, two major hurricanes. In one of our counties, Pinellas County, 99% of the infrastructure was affected to some degree. Most people's cars were lost. Didn't matter socioeconomic status, this was across the board. And so we're really focusing as a community on how we can build not only resilient infrastructure, rethinking our roads, rethinking our bridges, housing, etc., but our food systems and transport. So during these emergencies, how can we get food to those who may not have traditional access if the bridges are down? or have to be closed until they're cleared. So these are all very, well, I won't say new because we have experienced hurricanes, but not to this degree and not in the intensity and how often they're occurring. So this is a new challenge, but again, with the existing community collaborations and things of that nature, I think we're on the right path, but this is definitely where our focus is, in addition to all of the existing historical issues surrounding food insecurity and access.
Thank you. And that we don't often think about natural disasters and their implications for food insecurity because they don't happen that often. But, being in Florida, and it sounds like this is kind of getting worse over time, and the fact that you are all really focused on that in terms of building resilience going forward sounds like a really important community benefit. So thank you for doing that work. Just turning to you, Chris, are there unique challenges that you would point to in Oklahoma that you all are working through in terms of your work?
Yeah, several. Um, maybe not unique. I think every community has them. I think ours are more extreme. So statewide, we're very rural, right? So access is a major issue for us, particularly access to healthy food. We're 48th in the country in fruit and vegetable consumption. The vast majority of our counties contain a food desert if they're not entirely a food desert. And so that creates specific challenges. That's honestly how we got to running the nutrition incentive program in our state is we really wanted to be able to scale and bring a solution that made sense, because we know particularly in rural communities SNAP is such a crucial part of the economy and keeping the few rural grocery stores that are still open. And so we're in 46 grocery stores with that program now, 29 farmers markets, and a mobile grocery store as well. In addition to that, we're partnering with tribes, which is not actually a unique challenge, it's a unique strength of ours. Over half our state is tribal reservation. Often the programs they are authorized to administer can serve non-tribal members and tribal members. So our state rejected summer EBT, which is one of our challenges. We're very conservative and don't like government programs. But our tribes, we've partnered now with 5 of them to bring summer EBT to 75% of the kids who are qualifying in the state. So over 300,000 kids this summer via various tribal programs. And I would say our other 2 big challenges are stigma, right? Because we are traditionally this very conservative state. When we started, nobody really publicly talked about SNAP, especially no elected officials, unless it was bad, right? And school meals were not a big issue. And so building an environment through public education, through messaging, through accomplishing, projects that everyone could applaud to start to break down some of that stigma and let leaders talk about these programs in positive ways, was challenging, but I think something we've slowly overcome over 8 years. And frankly, right now are trying to prevent a backslide on, just because of the rhetoric nationally and the challenges there. And then the last one is transportation is a huge challenge for us. We do not, even in our big cities, our public transportation is severely lacking, and is very challenging. And in rural areas, there's none, right? So trying to find solutions that can help with that access. So for instance, we just got a USDA grant via FRAC to work on transportation to WIC for WIC eligible families in Western Oklahoma, because that's where our lowest WIC participation is. So again, not unique. Lots of communities have them. I would say that it is stronger and more severe of a challenge in Oklahoma than in most other places.
Thanks, Chris. Kate, what are some of the unique challenges in Indy or the state that you all are addressing?
Well, one thing that is a pretty defining characteristic of our community is that there are a lot of communities of faith, a lot of people involved heavily in their churches and other faith communities. There are lots of little congregations sprinkled all over the place, and every faith congregation wants to start their own food pantry. So we have over 200 food pantries in Marion County, where Indianapolis is located, and within the metro area, over 350 food pantries, which makes it challenging for people looking for food to figure out where the pantries are, when they're open, what they offer, who they serve. And so we've done 2 things to address that challenge. One is that we created an app called Community Compass that helps people find food resources in our community. We started just with Indianapolis food resources, and now we cover the entire state of Indiana. so people can find food pantries, free meal sites. They can screen themselves for WIC and SNAP, find a place to use WIC and SNAP benefits, or an office where they can enroll in those benefit programs, and then also events related to food access in our community. So we're trying to help people navigate that system. We've also been trying to work with those food pantries to improve the quality of service that they provide, because every, well-meaning person that goes to a church thinks that they need to have a food pantry in their church, and so they don't always know about food safety, about food banks and where to source food, about how to serve people with dignity, about how to leave judgment behind when you're serving people who are seeking help. And so we created a manual of best practices for food pantries to help them learn about how to do it well. And then we hold an annual conference for food pantries as well that will help them connect with each other, learn from their peers, and then learn from some experts about ways to do food pantry work better. And we're always encouraging food pantries to collaborate with each other at the very local level, in terms of making sure that if there are 5 food pantries in a neighborhood, they're not all open at the same time, but they're available to residents at different times of day or on different days of the week, so that they can improve access rather than just duplicating each other's work and wondering why they only have 10 families coming through when they're open. So I'd say that those are some ways that we've tried to address that particular challenge in our community. We also have a very conservative, not city, but state government, and the stigma is real here as well. So trying to make sure that these food pantries and other, even our state and federal partners, are understanding the sort of why people are hungry, and doing a lot of education about the root causes, and fight that stigma in our community so that people who are struggling don't have to feel badly asking for help.
Thanks, Kate. And I've actually seen your documentaries on this, looking at the root causes of hunger in the community there, and I think they're excellent. So we'll definitely include them in the resources for folks to see after the podcast. And really appreciate how all of you are tackling the various issues you're seeing in your communities, and also looking at communities as assets, your partners and groups that are aligned to do this work, be they faith communities or tribal communities. So you've already started to address this question of sort of multi-sector collaboratives, but just want to open that question a little bit more. I think it's really fundamental to the kind of systems change work we're doing, and just curious if any of you want to share any particular stories about collaborations, or talk up any of the unique collaborations you might have in your work.
So we had been looking at the trends of utilization of the federal nutrition programs, and like most communities, we saw an underutilization of the summer food service program. So we started to put this idea together for a home delivery meal program to serve kids during the summer that couldn't access the summer food service program sites. And we were looking to do a very small pilot, handful of families, just to see what impact that bringing the food the last mile would have on the family's home security and the child's food security. And this was in the spring of 2020, and we had secured a small amount of funding for this small pilot program to deliver home meals to kids and their families. And all of a sudden, we were thwarted into, emergency management meetings, schools were closed. And within weeks, because of the networking that we had within our 3 counties, we were able to set up a home delivery, a formal program with volunteers, program partners, food packers, food supply, working with the schools to utilize the buses for deliveries, all within a matter of weeks. Serving the first week 6 families. By the 4th week, I think we were serving over 200 families, and just started to spread from St. Petersburg to Tampa throughout the 3 counties. But my point is, we were only able to do it and to scale it up in the short time period to meet the need because of the partners. So, you know, time was not a luxury that we had. And thankfully, because of the structure that we had been, putting into place for years, and the partnerships and relationships, and the trust and the reciprocity was there. So we were able to just truly work together to meet the need. And And that I think is just one of the main benefits to collaboration, keeping everybody informed, but also just being able to act to meet the need when, there's a situation that requires attention.
Finding common ground and building trust with folks is crucial. And from those relationships come these opportunities. So, one of the first things we started that was actually like coming to be as we were coming to be, but we were asked to be the backbone, was a statewide child food security coalition. So, on that coalition are lots of summer meals sponsors. We were able to get our state Department of Ed, who administers the program for Oklahoma. We were able to get food banks, YMCAs, and the Chickasaw Nation, who runs a very large summer feeding program in our state. And from that coalition, when opportunities would arise, other impactful projects have come to be, right? So, because of our relationship with Chickasaw Nation through that and them seeing that we deliver on what we do, when our state rejected summer EBT, we went to what they call the Intertribal Council, which is been referred to as the five civilized tribes, which is not my favorite term, but the term that is still used even by the five tribes. So it's Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Muskogee, and Seminole. We were able to go to their council, and because of our relationship with Chickasaw Nation, ask them to consider expanding their summer EBT program with us. And the governor of Chickasaw Nation is the chair of that council and knew us, trusted us, and said, yes, let's do it. Right. So we were able to expand. The same has been true from that relationship. A woman from the YMCA's moved to a new community called Perry, Oklahoma, and had seen the work we did and came to us and said, we want to start our own hunger-free community in Perry. And so we were able to help build community champions there. We were able to bring our Double Up program there and expand them. So they now have CEP and they have access to summer meals by helping build their technical assistance. And so from those little, opportunities to build relationship and build trust, when issues arise or opportunities arise or crises arise, you can be more effective and more impactful because you're already in partnership and you have that trust. I would say the other place for us is we've been really intentional about trying to build in opportunity for voice from lived experts and from young people. And so we run our group called Learn. I actually just attended their graduation 2 days ago. It was awesome. And some of them went to DC with us recently. They go to the state capitol with us. And we have a youth group, and that helps, I think, us stay accountable to community and show that we're listening and we change. And that again helps build trust at that more grassroots level when we need to have very local action.
Thanks, Chris. Kate?
I'd say that what Chris is describing in terms of building trust has been really key for us too. Just in the early days, getting the partners to know each other and talk to each other seemed like a huge accomplishment because everybody's focused on doing the best within their organization to meet their own mission. And sometimes it feels like a stretch to step outside of that and help a partner. But I think we really have built that trust in the nonprofit community. Maybe one component of our network that is unique is we have two ag-related companies that are key partners. One of those is Corteva AgriScience. They do a lot of seed and crop protection. And then the other is Elanco, which is an animal health organization that creates medicines for farm animals and for companion animals as well. And so both of those companies have hunger relief as key components of their sort of corporate giving. And we have brought them into the governance of our organization because they engage their employee networks as well as contributing to quite a few of our partners, including us, on an annual basis. And so we really want to make them feel part of the collective that's working to solve these problems. And then maybe one more unique partnership I'll mention is that we work locally with our Circles organization. If you're not familiar with that organization, they're an organization that creates intentional friendships between people of different socioeconomic backgrounds to help those folks sort of get the social capital they need to improve their situation. And we've worked with those circle leaders on things like outreach for our programs. We've given them some small grants to engage them in funding to provide feedback on our programs and to do outreach on our programs so that we're really getting that community feedback on the work that we're doing and making sure that there aren't things that we're missing, that we're hearing from the end user in a way that supports them and us.
Thanks, Kate. It's wonderful to hear about all of the interesting partnerships that you have. And I know you talked about the importance of building trust. And once you have that trust, the great thing about that is you can be ready to meet the moment. And I think you all described the importance of that, being ready to meet the moment when you're going to be called on, whether it's a COVID, natural disaster, or some other emergency. So it's really great to hear about the power of those partnerships. So I think I'll turn to advocacy now. I know all of us are very interested in advocacy on food security legislation and policy, and I'd love to get a better sense of what you all are advocating on at the moment. But I have to pause and say, when we're recording this podcast, the House last week released its budget reconciliation bill that is calling for cutting almost $300 billion out of the SNAP program. And a huge part of the way that those cuts will be enacted is they'll be shifting those costs to states. So that's, in addition to other ways that they're looking to enact those SNAP cuts. So we know that this is the current environment that we're in as we talk about the importance of advocacy. Would love to get a sense from you all, in addition to the budget, which I know we're all concerned about. What are some of the other advocacy platforms that you have at the moment? Why don't we reverse order, so that we can give Kate a chance to go first?
I guess I'll mention locally two things that are happening. One is that Indiana participated in the Sunbox program in 2024 and has opted out for 2025. And we have been raising a stink as much as we possibly can about that. I think it's too late for this summer for anything to change, but we're trying to make sure that people are aware. And I have seen a lot more public engagement in this than in any other issue that we've dealt with, at a local level in my time with Indy Hunger Network. The current administration is saying that they weren't set up properly to administer the program this year by the previous administration, which is not true because the previous administration ran the program successfully last summer, right? So we've been pointing out that that doesn't make sense, and the impact on kids in our community, doing lots and lots of media interviews over the past few weeks. And we hope that this will change things for next year if the Sunbucks program still exists. Another issue, I don't know if you all saw in the news, but we're one of the first states to request a waiver from USDA to ban purchases of soda and candy with SNAP benefits. And while this seems, to the layperson like it might be a great idea because we want everyone to be healthy and eat healthy foods, we see it as arbitrary. There's still plenty of other unhealthy items that you can buy with SNAP benefits, even if soda and candy are disallowed. Our concern is that any restriction you put on SNAP is a slippery slope and paves the way for future restrictions and taking away people's autonomy in the foods that they choose to purchase for their families. And then lastly, people, SNAP is supplemental, so people buy other foods with their budget. So maybe people will spend their SNAP dollars on healthier foods, but they'll still be able to buy soda and candy with their own money. So what you're not addressing is the nutrition education, what's available to people in their communities that they're able to buy with poor transportation and poor access to healthy foods. So we've been speaking out against that as well. And then obviously trying to speak up about the potential huge cuts to SNAP. And one thing that I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about is SNAP Ed. And SNAP Ed funds quite a bit of our work at Indy Hunger Network. And the loss of that program, which is zeroed out in the House reconciliation bill, would be devastating to our organization and the work that we do in our community.
Thank you, Kate. And I know that, we are also baffled by cutting a nutrition education program out of SNAP when you're insisting you want people to eat healthier. So, obviously, that's not the reason the program is being zeroed out. So, I think that, yeah, there's a lot in the budget that we're concerned about, including the elimination of the SNAP Ed program. Chris, do you want to go next?
Would echo everything I already said. We don't get dollars from SNAP-Ed, but a lot of our partners do and do really great work in communities teaching about healthy choices. For us, at the state level, to be honest, over the last 8 years, we have gotten better in our state legislature of we don't propose many terrible bills in our space anymore. But we had one to do healthy SNAP, as well as a ton of unnecessary and duplicative data checks on things that would have handed big private contracts to for-profit companies to do data checks, while creating a ton of costs for the state to limit that. We were successful in killing that bill, and we're really happy about it. I think for us, priorities are one, summer EBT, because I haven't bought into the USDA's branding yet, but Sunbucks, as Kate called it. Um, we want to see statewide. We're in a really inequitable situation in our state where, 300,000 kids are going to get summer EBT, and that's awesome via the work we're doing with tribes. But every kid in Western Oklahoma can't have access because there's no tribal services out there, so they can't get to them. They're not allowed to cover that space, or at least currently they're not allowed to. And so getting the state to opt in is a big piece for us. We have been pushing universal meals like a lot of places have, and we haven't seen a ton of traction there yet, but we have seen more people understanding and being willing to talk about, well, why can't we incentivize schools to opt into CEP, which, the national chatter about ending CEP is a great concern to us because we just had a huge percentage of schools opt into that when we convinced our state agency to become part of the Medicaid pilot for direct certification. So that's a big issue for us. But it is kind of hard to talk about anything else when you have the state cost share proposal up federally, right? So we as a state in Oklahoma cannot raise revenue constitutionally without a supermajority in our state legislature, but we can cut revenue constantly. And they are constantly trying to cut taxes, which are basically irreversible actions for us, right? And so to think that we will be able to come up with the somewhere between 170 and $475 million that this state cost share proposal would cost us in the current state of affairs, right? If we have another economic downturn, that cost only goes up, and we lose revenue as a state every time there's an economic downturn because of oil prices and all those things, right? Would be absolutely detrimental. Like, there's no way SNAP does what it's supposed to do if you go through that proposal. So we're working on a lot of education. What I would say about advocacy generally for us is we view everything we do, all the programmatic work, all those things, that is about building constituencies of people who now understand the value of the federal nutrition programs and the importance of them in our communities. We want people to be able to understand it so they can voice their opinions. And I think we're seeing more of that. Like, we took 10 CEOs from our state to DC early this year to talk to our constituency, and we're lining up a visit to take maybe as many as 50 in September. And that, I can't imagine any of that happening 8 years ago. There's a lot of challenges right now, but I also see a lot of hope in, frankly, a state that had like no advocacy network in this space. It is starting to come to fruition through just partnership and relationship and education. So we had lots of positive priorities, frankly, until all these really bad federal proposals came. And now it's about how do we protect and push back for a while.
Thanks, Chris. Caitlyn?
Sure. So echoing what Kate and Chris have already said, specific to our area, I just wanted to add we are prioritizing advocating for the reinstatement of the Emergency Food and Shelter Program. So that is a sub program of FEMA, and we administer it for to out of our 3 counties. And as of January, the program has been put on pause, which has caused hundreds of thousands of dollars to be withheld from agencies who already had to sign contracts agreeing to pre-spend it. So it is just causing a lot of concern and questions for those in our community. So that's one thing we're advocating for as far as to get the program reinstated, at least to give the agencies that had already signed the contracts and pre-spent the money that they were promised. And then in addition, just to really focus on positive messaging. I think if we can take the momentum of people now seeing those people that may not have stood up to go to DC 8 years ago are now going. People that were supporting these ideas are kind of scratching their heads. So I think just hopping on the momentum of people understanding that, maybe there's a different way to look at this and do this has been pretty powerful in our communities. But again, the emergency food and shelter program that has already had significant impacts on our communities is our priority right now.
Thanks. It's great to hear how people are being activated in your communities and how you're working to advocate for these really, really important programs. I know all of your organizations are part of the Alliance to End Hunger's Hunger Free Communities Network. So we've all been in partnership for a very long time. And we so appreciate all of you and the work you're doing in your communities. I would love to just get a sense of what have you found to be some of the advantages of being part of a nationwide coalition or network?
I see value in just learning from others, right? We get lessons from all across the country, whether that's filtered through the Alliance or from meetings where we get to talk to each other. Um, and we learn about failures and things to avoid, which I think is also helpful. I think in work like this, it is community matters, like just like community matters for the work locally, to know you're a part of a bigger community and that others are struggling with the same things you're struggling with can be helpful to prevent burnout and just make you feel motivated and keep going. And then, I mean, obviously, I think the Alliance for us is a huge source of information when I can't afford to pay somebody to be in DC all the time. And so educating us about what's happening, giving us opportunities for advocacy or to connect is huge for small organizations. And not to speak for you, Minerva, but I think we also bring that for you. You're able to mobilize a bigger group of people. So all good things.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Chris just said. I don't know that I could say it better, but the connections to the other partners across the country have really been valuable. Just last week, I reached out to the San Diego Hunger Coalition to ask a question about their board structure as we work to change ours. And knowing that if I reach out, having never met somebody, but they understand that we're another hunger free community organization, they want to partner, they want to help. They want to share information. So sometimes it can feel pretty isolating being in your community trying to pull people together on your own, but knowing that there are people across the country doing this work too, it gives us a group of people to lean on. And then, as Chris said, the tools and the information that we get from the Alliance have been really valuable. The opportunities to speak up and to know what's happening in DC in terms of advocacy, trainings on racial equity, and tools on the framework of sort of the stages of hunger-free communities and where we should be aiming. I think all of those things just are really valuable to know that we're in this work with other people and we've got support out there.
Yeah, I think the support is a great benefit, and truly knowing that you're not alone. I will say the Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger was actually modeled after the Indy Hunger Network. So my predecessor back in 2010, 2011 was the CEO of the local Feeding America, and um, went up and there was a convening, and a couple of years later the Hunger Network was born. That's just an example of how two agencies can come together and learn from each other to create a really meaningful new initiative. So I would just say, again, the support, the tools, the research, the resources, and the action, the ability to take action, and the opportunities that y'all afford the HFC members, I think is just crucial, especially right now.
Thanks. And we so appreciate partnering with all of you and just really learning from all of you and the work that you're doing. And also appreciate the fact that if ever I reach out to any of you and say, hey, there's somebody who has questions or really wants to think about doing similar work to you, that you're all always ready to just put yourselves out there, be a resource, and communicate with folks. So thank you for all of that. There are probably folks listening to this who are thinking, wow, we need a hunger free community initiative in our community, or maybe this is something that we should think about doing. We may have some great anti hunger initiatives, but they aren't really connected in a way to make systemic change. So I would love to get your advice to anybody who's thinking about starting the process of creating a hunger free community initiative.
I think always the first thing is to look what's already happening. Kate referenced it about pantries and the faith-based community in Indianapolis. I think often people, when they see a problem, they'll go, well, no one else is doing it. And they just start something without actually saying, like, should I seek out and see what's really happening? And that creates duplication of work. It creates not an efficient use of resources. And it can actually be super detrimental to relationship building because you're coming in with this attitude of, like, I'm here doing something no one else is doing. And so approach it with humility, understand, find and seek out who's already doing the work and talk to them and learn from them and build off what you already have.
Well, we've been at this now since 2009, and the original partners who created Indy Hunger Network have all moved on. They've all retired or moved out of state or moved on to other work. And what I didn't expect was having to re-explain the importance of collective impact and collaboration every time we got a new leader in one of those organizations. And so you don't build trust and then you can work together. You're building the trust and building the relationships is a constant job, and maybe the most important thing to keep it working. There have been times when I've assumed somebody understands the benefit of working together or the importance of a collective impact sort of backbone organization, and not adequately explained it, and it hasn't gone well. So I find I'm constantly reminded that we need to tell the story, we need to show the value, and we need to make sure new partners are engaged to keep the organization going and the collaboration strong.
Thank you all for your wonderful advice and for sharing some of the work that you all are doing and your vision for hunger-free communities. And thank you all for your partnership, but also your leadership in this space of creating hunger-free communities. It's a value that we all share. We know that it's achievable. And I know sitting where I sit, where we mostly work on federal policy, it is incredibly comforting to me to know that there are all of you working in your communities and your states to affirm the importance of creating hunger-free communities. So we really appreciate you and the work that you do. That was Caitlyn Peacock of the Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger, Chris Bernard of Hunger Free Oklahoma, and Kate Howe of Indy Hunger Network. You can learn more about these three incredible organizations and the work that they do through our show notes. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Voices to End Hunger, and don't forget to subscribe. Today's episode was produced by Nate McGrath. I'm Minerva Delgado. Have a great day.